Welcome to my small garden. It was the first really warm day after the winter, and the weather forecast showed that there will be no frost for the following days. So I decided to get out in the garden and clean it up a bit. In autumn, I did not do a really good job. There were still tomatoes, stalks dried, visible, but the garden was coming to life. There were daffodils and tulips coming. I have to clean up also some flower pots which have dried plants in them, but the rest it's still in a really good shape. So let's go. I wanted to start with the most difficult part of all, that is a really big climbing rose, which I have grown from very small, and it is currently using a support that it no longer needs. So I want to trim that rose and prepare it for spring, and also I want to remove the support and use it somewhere else in my garden. For this rose, I needed to take out the heavy artillery in order to cut some thicker branches, which really helped. I remember last spring I really struggled with some thicker branches when using just a very small tool. I decided to take a break on that big rose and trying to clean up the easier parts, just to focus on this 80-20 principle, because 80% of the work can be done in 20% of the time, and I thought it would really motivate me to go further with the rose. During the time I'm doing the work, I'm also reflecting on what worked really well, what grew really well in my garden, because I want to plant again the plants that really thrived last year, but I want to try to avoid the mistakes I did. The amazing thing about gardening is that every year you start over. You have a blank canvas where you can create again. And nobody's gonna know which mistakes you did last year or 2 years before. You can always improve. I'm always layering when working in the garden, because I can take off some vests when I get warm or when the weather gets warm, and this way I will not get a cold. Talking about the mistakes I did last year, I think the biggest mistake I did in my really small garden is something that beginner gardeners and people that have a very limited space for planting do. That is, they want to plant tomatoes, they want zucchinis, they want um, pumpkins, they want uh, beans, and so on. And the space is basically not enough for that. And yeah, when they are small, they look so cute and they have plenty of space in between them. But every time you need to take to consider how big the plant will be. And even if I had some years of experience, I still made last year the same mistake. And this year, I really want to avoid that. I want to have space to go and pick up my tomatoes and not squeeze in between them. And this way, I think I will also have a bigger harvest. Um, I found a rose which was frozen during the winter. It did not manage to flower, but still, I can appreciate its beauty also right now. So now you can also see what I meant with planting in that really small space. I managed to cram 4 tomato plants in one row. What happened was that I really struggled with picking up the harvest. They were great tomatoes, they thrived, and they really produced a lot of tomatoes. And I had to really squeeze in between them, and it was more than once that I injured myself in the big rose that is on the corner on the right, because I did not have any space. So this year I really want to limit myself and plant a maximum of 4 tomatoes in a row, just to have a little bit more space. And who knows, maybe I will have a bigger harvest this way. Another mistake I did was that I was really impatient, and I got into this great excitement whenever garden centers came up with the first series of small plants for the garden, and I then had to protect them in the evening in order to help them stabilize themselves. And it was not an easy job. I also neglected a little bit the risks of having snowfall in the middle of April, and that happened last year. And actually, I lost 2 tomato plants which were planted 2 weeks prior because of that. So this year, I will definitely try even more to postpone the first plants, but let's see how I will, if I will succeed. One of the things I really want to do this year is to experiment with new plants. Maybe I will plant some beans or some medicinal herbs such as chamomile and valerian, but I will definitely not plant any watermelons anymore because they are not growing in my garden in this climate. Now I finally went back to my big climbing rose, and I really struggled. I had to trim it quite seriously in order to be able to take out the support, but it still took about maybe half an hour all in all. I think it was because I was alone and I couldn't kind of direct the branches the way I wanted, but I'm really glad that I finally managed to do that. There isn't much left in my raised bed. I just have some mint, which I am planning to repot in an actual pot, because the mint was really spreading like a weed, was growing so much, and I want to contain it a little bit because I'm not using that much. Well, now I'm finally finished with cleaning up, and I'm able to use the support in a different place, and that is at my entrance. I managed last year to get a wisteria plant, which was very small, and I wanted to grow on this beautiful support. This plant was really amazing because it usually flowers in May or in June, depending on the weather. But for me, as a really small plant and new, it managed to flower in autumn. So I really enjoyed the first flowers of wisteria with in this autumn in the first year of planting. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'm really hopeful that this year I will also get some beautiful um, flowers of wisteria. In the front, last year was the first time when I planted some flower bulbs at the front of the house. I was very excited about that, but actually, I got really few plants growing because of the snails. So this year, I'm really studying what to do to kind of naturally repel snails and be able to grow some flowers at the front of the garden. It's also towards the north, so it's more humid, it's more shadow, and it's a place where snails are really enjoying. Tired but happy to report that I finished. I really managed to do everything I planned today in the garden, and now I will take my time. I will reflect on what I really want to plant in my small space in the garden, and I will keep you updated. So if you are interested to see which plants will make it to my really small garden patch, subscribe, and I will definitely share my experience this year with my garden. I thank you so much for taking time to watch my video, and I will see you in my next one.